Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something pretty unique for our 14th deep dive.
Yeah, this one is a little different.
We're calling it John Chat. Let's chat with John. And basically, we're going to be like flies on the wall for a really fascinating lecture.
Ooh, I like that, flies on the wall. That's a good way to put it.
So our lecturer is Professor John from National Taiwan Normal University, and he's kind of a big deal.
I was going to say, Professor John is not just a professor, he's also...
Yeah, he won the 2024 Golden Bell Award for Best Radio Host, which is a huge honor in Taiwan.
It's like the top award for broadcasting there.
Exactly. So we know we're in for a really engaging listen.
It's so cool that we get to experience it just as it happened at the Central Region Adapted Physical Education Collaborative Action Station, you know?
They're totally raw and unfiltered.
Like we're right there in the audience.
So Professor John is going to be talking about some really crucial stuff.
We're talking inclusion in education, the CRPD.
Which is the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Right, and Taiwan's new Special Education Act.
The Midterm Special Education Plan.
Even a glimpse into the future with this idea of a new adapted sports department.
Oh, and don't forget, we've got a link to his presentation slides in the show notes so you can follow along visually.
Definitely check those out.
All right, so Professor John kicks things off with a statement that's like a total mind shift.
What's that?
He says that everyone, and I mean everyone, is a potential candidate for needing accessibility accommodations at some point in their lives.
Oh.
I know, right? It's kind of a profound thought when you really think about it.
Yeah, it really challenges how we typically think about disability.
It's like he's saying we all might need a little extra help sometime, whether it's from aging or illness or maybe an accident.
And he uses stats to back this up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, did you know that Taiwan has over 1.227 million registered individuals with disabilities, and that number is growing?
That's a lot of people.
And here's the thing, over 87% of those disabilities are acquired, meaning people develop them later in life, not from birth.
So this whole concept of midway disability is super important.
It totally changes the conversation.
And then, to really drive the point home, he tells a couple of powerful stories.
Ooh, I love a good story.
So there's this one about a doctor who participated in a simulation where he was restrained in a bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was meant to mimic the experience of some patients in long-term care.
That must have been intense.
And the doctor later said he had no idea how dehumanizing and restrictive it could feel until he experienced it himself.
It's amazing how powerful firsthand experience can be.
It really highlights the need for empathy in designing a society that works for everyone.
Absolutely. And then there's that other story about his students.
Oh, yeah, the one where they had to wear diapers and eat pureed food.
To simulate the challenges of aging.
Talk about a memorable learning experience.
You can't really understand another person's experience until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Or in this case, maybe until you've eaten pureed food in a diaper.
Uh-huh. Yeah, maybe not that literally.
But you get the point.
I do. It's about going beyond just textbook definitions of inclusion and creating opportunities for real understanding.
Exactly.
And encouraging us to think about how we treat those who might not have a voice to advocate for themselves.
So from there, Professor John dives into the legal side of things, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
He starts talking about the CRPD, which, as we mentioned, stands for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Right, and Taiwan has adopted this convention, so it's now part of their national law.
Which is a big deal because ignoring the needs of students with disabilities isn't just a moral issue anymore, it carries legal weight.
So it's not just something schools can choose to do or not do.
Exactly, and Professor John really emphasizes this principle of reasonable accommodation that's outlined in the CRPD.
So making sure everyone has equitable access, even if it means doing things a little differently.
Right, and he even points out that we all benefit from these accommodations in our daily lives, whether we realize it or not.
Like ramps and elevators.
Yeah, those were initially designed with accessibility in mind, but they've become things we all use and appreciate.
It's true, they make life easier for everyone.
And he specifically brings up Article 30 of the CRPD, which focuses on the right to participate in sports and recreation.
That's an interesting one.
It's easy to overlook, but it's so important for well-being and quality of life.
Everyone deserves the chance to enjoy those things.
Absolutely.
So this ties right into his vision for the future of adapted physical education and sport in Taiwan, but...
It's a story for part 2.
So we know inclusion is important ethically and legally, but putting it into practice isn't always easy.
That's for sure. Professor John talks about some of the roadblocks Taiwan is facing.
He mentions an international review that basically said Taiwan needs to step up its game.
It pointed out that even with good intentions, they're still falling short in some areas.
Like the statistic about kids in Taiwan's juvenile detention centers?
Yeah, a lot of them have undiagnosed disabilities.
Meaning they might not be getting the support they need.
It makes you wonder, are these centers really about rehabilitation, or are they punishing kids for challenges stemming from disabilities?
That's a tough question. Professor John really grapples with it.
He even shares a personal story about how if his own daughter were harmed, he'd want retribution.
But then he challenges that initial reaction.
And asks what truly creates a safer and more just society.
It's about looking at the bigger picture.
Right. How do we move beyond punishment and help these kids get back on track?
He talks about a program where they're learning to bake in these centers.
They're developing skills, finding a sense of accomplishment.
But then they're released into a world that often stigmatizes them.
It makes it hard to break free from those old patterns.
It shows that real change needs more than individual effort.
It needs systemic change and a shift in societal attitudes.
But even with these challenges, there are some bright spots.
Professor John highlights some positive steps Taiwan is taking.
Like the updated Special Education Act.
Article 38 now mandates adapted physical education resources.
That's huge. It makes it a requirement, not just an option.
And on a practical level, all national sports centers have been upgraded to be more accessible.
That's great. It shows they're putting those policies into action.
And then there's the really big news.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
They're creating a whole new Ministry of Sports, separate from the Ministry of Education.
Wow, that's a major commitment to sports.
And what's even more groundbreaking,
What's that?
this new ministry is expected to have a dedicated, adapted sports department.
No way.
I know it's a huge step forward.
It shows how seriously they're taking adapted sports.
Professor John is super excited about this. He outlines his vision for this department.
But before we get into that.
Right, we should probably clarify some terms.
Yeah, it can get confusing.
So adapted physical education focuses on modifying traditional PE to meet the needs of students with disabilities.
So it's about making PE inclusive within the school system.
Exactly. And then there's adapted physical activity, which is any kind of movement that's accessible for people with disabilities.
So broader than just PE, it can be recreational, sports, fitness, dance, anything.
And finally, adapted sports are competitive activities specifically for athletes with disabilities.
Like the Paralympics.
Exactly. Having these clear definitions is crucial for advocating for resources.
And developing programs that meet specific needs.
Okay, so back to the adapted sports department.
Right. Professor John's vision.
He talks about research, professional development, accessible sports, tourism, community engagement, and even sports poverty.
Sports poverty? What's that?
It's when people lack access to sports due to socioeconomic factors.
Like not having enough money or transportation.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Professor John thinks this department could really tackle these issues.
It's about making sports equitable for everyone.
He even proposes a task force led by the Minister of Sports to focus on adapted sports.
That'd be amazing.
He emphasizes collaboration across different government departments.
Because this issue touches so many areas.
Education, healthcare, social welfare, even tourism.
It's all connected.
Okay, so Professor John ends his lecture with a story that perfectly sums up this whole idea of interconnectedness.
What's the story?
He talks about this swimming pool manager who didn't see the need for accessibility.
Until his own mother had a fall and needed help getting into the pool.
Exactly. Suddenly, those accommodations became a pressing need.
It shows that inclusive design benefits everyone, even those who might not realize it at first.
We never know when we might find ourselves needing those accommodations.
It's a good reminder that we're all in this together.
Professor John's lecture ends on that note, urging us to build a more inclusive society for everyone.
A powerful message.
What are your takeaways from all of this?
Well, honestly, I'm really impressed with how Professor John manages to bring it all together, you know?
Right.
The academic stuff with the policy and legislation, but then he weaves in those really human stories.
Well, absolutely.
Like the doctor in the bed restraint simulation?
Yeah.
Or his students eating pureed food?
It makes it so much more real and relatable, right?
Exactly. It's not just abstract concepts anymore.
And that story about the swimming pool manager,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
it just hits home, doesn't it?
It really shows how quickly our perspectives can change when we experience the need for accessibility firsthand.
It's like that saying, you don't know someone's struggles until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Exactly. And it highlights how important advocates like Professor John are.
Yeah, he's really pushing for change.
And making sure these issues aren't forgotten.
And speaking of Professor John, remember we've got that link to his slides in the show notes.
Definitely check those out if you want to learn more.
There's so much good information in there.
This whole deep dive has really got me thinking about the future of adapted sports, you know?
Yeah, me too.
I mean, we see these amazing Paralympic athletes,
Yeah,
but there's still so much we can do to create more opportunities for everyone.
at all levels, recreational, competitive, everything.
It's about breaking down those barriers.
And fostering a culture that welcomes everyone.
Maybe this has even sparked an idea for you.
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe you're inspired to volunteer or advocate for change in your own community.
Yeah, make things more inclusive.
The possibilities are really endless.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. They really get you thinking.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep advocating for a more inclusive world.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of adapted physical education and sports in Taiwan.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.